Good morning, beautiful people. How's it going today? I am here in my home, como siempre, and we are nearing the end of our school year. Right, next week will be the last week. You'll have your poetry test on Wednesday, so we'll have a review on Tuesday. We're not gonna be doing that much more. I mean, we're doing sonnets today, a little bit more. Watched the John Green video yesterday for keeping up with everything, and so today we're going to talk a little bit more about sonnet, specifically Sonnet 18, which is arguably probably Shakespeare's most famous. John Green even talked about it yesterday, so a little bit. But we're going to talk about it a little bit more so that you have it good in your mind what a sonnet is and maybe even write your own next week. Yes, yes, that will happen. Oh, yes. For some of you, whoever wants to do work, which is the way school works now, which is something. It's definitely something. All right, so let's get going. Talk about sonnets. All right, some of this is going to be a review, but hey, it does not hurt to hear things more than once. Repetition is a good thing. That's kind of what we do in English classes. We keep doing the same thing over and over again, and hopefully something gets in there, right? All right, so let's get going on this. I'm not going to keep you all day. Minimize me. Let's start this slideshow. All right. It's through this PowerPoint that we are going to be looking at Sonnet 18 as well. So, a sonnet is a lyric poem. Don't panic if you don't really know what I'm talking about here, because I have slides that explain every one of these lines. So, this is how I roll, people. A sonnet is a lyric poem consisting of 14 lines. We've talked about that many times, right? It's written in iambic pentameter. We'll get in depth on that one. A definite rhyme scheme, depending on if it's English, Italian, or Spencerian. There's a definite thought structure. I think this is where a lot of people get thrown off because it's hard to kind of wrap your head around what we mean by thought structure. So we'll get into that a little bit more and how to identify said thought structure. All right. So the first line, a lyric poem. A lyric poem is a poem. It actually comes from the word lyre. Lyre, which is a small harp. Oftentimes with a lyre, a bard would create beautiful poetry, and often these dealt with emotions, feelings, love, mostly. Okay? That is a lyric poem. And a pentameter. Penta means 5. We talked about this in class. Iambs are units of unstressed and stressed syllables. So an iamb is 2 syllables. If you have 5 of them, you have 10 syllables in it. So that makes iambic pentameter. There's different kinds. We talked about before. There's trochaic pentameter, which is where you have 5 trochees, which is, you don't have to get into that. Just wrap your head around iambic pentameter. Okay? So an iamb is a metrical foot. Metrical meaning meter. Meter is the rhythm of the poem, right? A metrical foot. We're not talking like the metric system here. We're talking meter. Poetic meter. An iamb is a metrical foot consisting of an unaccented syllable, which we denote. If you are notating a poem, you would do the unaccented with that U symbol. Looks like a U, looks like a capital U, or U, followed by an unaccented syllable, which is, followed by the accented syllable, which is a slash. So I think I did this in class. You punch the syllable, the slash looks like your arm punching down, and then accented, it looks like a U. So that's easy to remember. Unaccented is the U. The slash is when you punch that syllable. I'm going to punch my dog if she barks one more time. Just kidding. I would never, ever do that. Okay. So the word, again, is an iamb. An accented syllable followed by the accented syllable. Immortalize. Okay. Unaccented, accented, unaccented, accented. Excuse me, while I accent my dog in the face. Just kidding. Where were we? All right. So, I am. All right. Our next, come on, let's go. There we are. So, iambic pentameter. This is an excerpt from Sonnet 75. We know it's not the entire sonnet. Why? Because there's only 4 lines, but it is an iambic pentameter. So he says, one day I wrote her name upon the strand, but came the waves and washed it away. Again I wrote it with a second hand, but came the tide and made my pains his prey. Okay? Now, when we're reading iambic pentameter, it's meant to mimic human speech. So we just do it normally. We just speak it normally. And if it's done correctly, you'll get that iambic pentameter. Bella! Shush! Get that iambic pentameter. So I'm going to read it as if I'm a robot and I'm trying to mimic human speech by reading it in iambic pentameter, okay? One day I wrote her name upon the strand, but came the waves and washed it away. Again I wrote it with a second hand, but came the tide and made my pains his prey. Okay, so that is your iambic pentameter. We don't read it that way because we're not robots. But if a robot were to try to mimic human speech, he could do it by iambic pentameter. Okay? None of us speak without accented syllables. That's just the way language works. Okay? Whew, they're rambunctious today. Give me a minute. Okay, so now let's look at how it would look if we were to annotate it. You'd have the unstressed followed by stressed in that first. One day I wrote her name upon the strand. Remember, the accented is marked by the slash. Okay? And then we have it in every one. So it holds up. It's definitely iambic pentameter. Spencer knows what he's doing. Okay? Each of those symbols, each of those slashes shows that is an iamb. So one day is an iamb. I wrote is an iamb. Her name is an iamb. Okay? And so on. All right. And again, 5 iambs make iambic pentameter. Hope this is clear. Correct on this into your head. Hopefully it's clear. Okay, rhyme scheme. 2 main types of sonnets. Petrarchan is the Italian sonnet. Petrarchan is also called Italian, but it's named after Petrarch, who wrote all of these, lots of sonnets, many of them to Laura, which he pronounced Laura, as John Green talked about in the video yesterday, to make it fit the pentameter. But his rhyme scheme is a little bit different from Shakespeare's rhyme scheme. Or, excuse me, English rhyme scheme. Shakespeare didn't come up with it, he just used it a lot. But the Italian rhyme scheme is ABBA ABBA, and it's either CD CD CD. So those are the first quatrain. It's ABBA. Second quatrain is ABBA, and then the sestet is in CD CD CD. Okay. It could also be ABBA ABBA CDE CDE. So those are both Italian, both acceptable. Okay. Shakespearean rhyme scheme. He did it with AB AB, or English, or Elizabethan, whichever you want to call it. Shakespeare didn't create it, he just used it. AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG. All right, so here is Sonnet 18, which we're going to look at a little bit more closely. And let's look at the rhyme scheme, first of all. Day and May would be the A, right? Thou art more lovely and more temperate, rhymes with date. Dut. That's what we call slant rhyme. It's not quite there, but it's close. Okay. Then we have shines, dimmed, declines, untrimmed. Okay. CD, CD. And we have fade, owest, shade, growest. All right. EF, EF, EF. Yeah. You with me? I hope you're with me, even though the lines aren't quite with me. They don't quite line up. But what are you going to do? Is what it is. And then we have C and D for the G and the G. Okay. That is how we mark rhyme scheme. Easy peasy, in it. All right. Thought structure. We have an octave and a sestet. So the way that it usually works, an octave is 8 lines, a sestet is 6 lines. So the octave would give you the situation. It'll set up the idea of the sonnet. And then the sestet, usually response. This is thought structure. So you have the idea set up in the first 8. The last 6 respond to it in some way. Sometimes it'll be like one speaker in the octave and then a different speaker in the sestet. Shows you the thought structure, the shift. This is part of your TP cast poetry analysis, right? Your first S is you want to identify shifts in the poem. And so in a sonnet, often the shift is after the octave and in the sestet, especially with more so with Italian, Petrarchan. Okay, and then we have another thought structure, which is the one Shakespeare used a lot, which is quatrain, 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 and the couplet. So each quatrain describes the idea or situation, and this leads to the conclusion. So with his, the shift is often in the couplet. The couplet is the final response, the clinch. The point of the sonnet often is in that final couplet. Okay. So let's before we get to this, let's read this sonnet in its entirety. Okay? I'm not going to read it like a robot trying to mimic iambic pentameter. I'm just going to read it like a human, as we are. Okay? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's leaf hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Okay. All right, so let's look at the thought structure of this now. So the octave, in the beginning part, the first 8 lines, describes the ways in which the summer's day is inferior to his beloved. If you watch the John Green video, you might have a good idea about who the beloved is and what gender he is. Watch the video. So the first 8 lines talk about how summer is inferior. Talks about those rough winds, summer's lease, summer's time on the year. It's all too short a date. It's gone too quick. Sometimes it's too hot in the summer. The eye of heaven, we have a personification there, some figurative language for us. And often is his gold complexion dimmed, his being the eye of heaven, the sun. So again, personifying the sun here. And every fair from fair sometimes declines. So when you have a good day, when you have a fair day, from that, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to decline. Okay? Every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course and trimmed. Okay? The sestet describes the way in which the beloved is superior to the summer's day. But thy eternal summer shall not fade. Okay? So whereas summer is going to end, your eternal summer, it will never fade. Nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, the fair looks that this person has. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. Okay? So basically talking about how death is not, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So he's saying that his beloved will be eternal, and the lines will only grow. And we see in the final couplet, the clinch, the way that the beloved will live forever, longer than any summer day or any summer season. Says, so long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. So what is this? This is the poem. This is the sonnet. So long lives this sonnet, and this sonnet gives life to thee. And here we are, 500 years later, reading about Shakespeare's beloved and imagining the beauty that Shakespeare found in his beloved. Okay, so what we've done there is we've kind of paraphrased the idea behind the sonnet, right? That is step 2 in TPcast. Since there's no title, we would just go to the P. We would skip the T, because you can't get much out of Sonnet 18. And so when we get to the second part where we re-examine the title, we aren't really going to be able to figure anything out because there's no title. Okay? But we've paraphrased it. All right, so now let's look at the connotation. Connotation is the C in TPcast. Looking at the connotation, what figurative language do we see in this poem? Okay. Here, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? I mean, that's kind of an extended metaphor, right? The summer's day is the extended metaphor throughout the sonnet. Okay, and says, thou, the beloved, art more lovely and more temperate. Okay. More just a comparison, not figurative language. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. Darling has a connotation of my darling, a love word, and he's using it to refer to the buds of May, the flowers of May, and the rough winds that shake them. He says, summer's lease hath all too short a date. So he compares the summer to having a lease, having a certain amount of time that it has over the year. And so that is a bit of personification. hath all too short a date. So sometime too hot, the eye of heaven shines. Eye of heaven, we already said, is personification. The eye of heaven is the sun. Sometimes it's too hot. Often his gold complexion dimmed. Okay, so again, that personification of the sun. And every fair from fair sometimes declines. No figurative language there. By chance our nature's changing course untrimmed. Okay? But thy eternal summer shall not fade. So personifies, what's the word? I guess it's just playing on that extended metaphor again. Nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, the fair looks that you have, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade. Death could never, death again personified, death is bragging that the beloved is going to be wandering in his shade. But he says, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So he is going to live forever, the beloved. And then we find out in the final couplet why, and it is because the sonnet has been written. All right, I'm not going to beat this into the ground. It's a pretty simple sonnet, very common sonnet, probably the most popular sonnet. As John Green says, often these Shakespearean sonnets are read at weddings because they are lyric poems. They're all about love. Okay, so that is Sonnet 18. I have more to this PowerPoint, but I'm not going to go through it all with you, talking about Sonnet 29, Sonnet 73. They're good, though. You should read it. Pause it right now and read it. Or just look through Shakespeare sonnets. If you could get a complete works of Shakespeare, look through some of his sonnets. See if you have a beloved, perhaps you could send one of Shakespeare's sonnets to your beloved and see what happens. All right? You guys have a great day. I'm not going to make this video go on too long. We're almost at the end of the year, which is a fantastic thing. We're going to have summer. We're going to enjoy summer as well as we can, as much as we can, and then hopefully we will be back in the fall. Okay? Miss you guys mucho. I've got a big old bushy beard growing. Maybe it'll be like 5 feet long by the time you see me in the fall. All right? Who knows? I'll probably get sick of it and shave it all off, and I'll just have a bare face and I'll look like a thumb. So we have that to look forward to. All right, guys. See you later. Bye. End. Why is it not ending? You over there? Up there.